I've known Lori. She's a member of Third Act as well as the Sierra Club and probably other organizations as well. But I really got to know her when I started paying attention to what was going on in Sangamon County and in Springfield. And this woman is just like a dervish. I think that's a good word. I mean, she just is spinning, spinning, spinning and doing lots of really good organizing work. So we're really happy to have her here to let us know what's going on. She works with the Coalition for Springfield's Utility Future and Sustainable Springfield to address the growing impacts of data center development in Sangamon County, which is where Springfield is. And these organizations are working to address the impacts of data center growth and educate Springfield City Council on its role as the overseer of city water, light, and power, which is no easy task. And the goal of this is that their municipally owned utility will transition to clean energy. So, Lori, thank you so much for being here, and let's do it.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Marty. That was very nice. Thank you for the Third Act people for having me. And Covey, that was a great presentation. I learn so much every time I hear these presentations. So I'm Coalition for Springfield's Utility Future is a coalition here in Springfield made up of environmental groups. It's Sustainable Springfield, Third Act, Sierra Club. This is like naming the seven dwarves for me. Faith in Place, Faith Coalition for the Common Good. We have Illinois Environmental Council. We have Citizens Utility Board. Yeah, those are all our volunteers. And then we have a couple of paid staffers from Sierra Club that are kind of like our advisors. So in the past several years, as Marty mentioned, we've primarily been working with City Water, Light, and Power here in Springfield to work with the coal-powered plant. And then our data center proposal came up in October for Sangamon County, and we kind of shifted gears really quickly. So I don't have slides only because at this local level, the projects are so varied. Every data center project is different. The number of watts, the megawatts they're using is different. The number of diesel generators is different. So it's hard to put it on slides. But I'm going to start out talking about balancing the benefits and harm of the data center project. So I'm pro economic development. I'm pro union. I understand the valuable uses of AI. I have no problem with AI. I have concerns about the proliferation of data centers. It really seems as if the building capacity is much greater than the need at this point. And that's causing a lot of problems locally. So I'm dealing with local activists in many of the locations in Illinois who have proposed data center projects. So these are projects where permits have been filed, annexations have been requested, and these projects will be voted on before the Power Act ever gets implemented. So we're dealing with a lot of issues right now that the legislation isn't going to help. So harms of data centers, Kavi mentioned transparency. That's a real difficult problem. There's not a lot of advance notice on these projects. These are massive projects. Kavi used the word unprecedented. I totally agree with that. These are so huge. But when they follow local regulations for notifications to residents, it's not enough time. So a city council typically has to put an agenda out 2 days in advance. A county board by state law has to give an agenda 15 days in advance. But when you hear of a data center project that's going to buy up hundreds of acres of land, ours in Sangamon County is going to be 1.5 million square feet of building surfaces, 100,000 square feet of parking lot, over 330 diesel backup generators. It's really hard to react to a project like that when you have 2 to 10 days notice. So the transparency is an issue. Disinformation is an issue. I've been to 3 presentations now by data center developers, and the presentations are always very simple presentations. This is going to be a great project. Your county, your city is going to benefit it. Nothing's going to go wrong. We aren't going to use a lot of water. There's always excuses for how good the project is going to be. So the first thing I want to mention is property values. So property values can be diminished from data center projects. Nobody wants to live by a data center. Ours here is rural. The farmers are concerned about the negative effects of lighting. Lighting can actually disrupt the circadian process of plants. So if you have green beans growing next to lights that are on 24 hours a day, it can affect the growing of the plants. So that when the data center developers are talking about that, they'll say, "Oh, our lighting will be fine, our generators won't be loud." So a lot of disinformation that really the people that live nearby adjacent to these properties need to understand that. There can be harms to health and definitely quality of life. The diesel generators that Covey mentioned there's a lot of emissions from that. Um, there are acres of land, so prime farmland. When you're taking 200 or 300 acres of farmland and putting that much square footage of building space and parking lot space, that land can never be recovered for farming again. At least with solar farms, when they take them down, you can recover the land. With a data center, the land is gone. It'll be a brown space when it's done. Um, but the main thing I want to talk about is the increase in electricity rates. I think that's what's most important to this group. Covey did a real good job of explaining the whole grid, the auction grid. So we had a we had a presentation at our data center that said that this data center would not increase rates, which is really an accurate statement. One data center alone will not necessarily raise our electricity rates. But when you're adding the amount of data centers that we have in Illinois, I'm working with 3 counties and 5 cities that all have proposed data centers, anywhere from 100 megawatts to some of them are 600 megawatts. So when the demand for electricity goes up that high and that quickly, and the supply is not going up, that's when our rates can be affected. So that's a big issue for this group, I think. Now, the promised benefits, so I'm talking about balancing the benefits and the harm. The promised benefits are tax revenues, and in many cases, localities do get millions of dollars of tax revenues. My concern with that, our concern with that, is tax revenues can be appealed. A gas-powered plant in Jackson County down by Carbondale in 2022 appealed their tax assessments and had the value of their property reduced by 90% through this tax appeal process. The local school district lost 30% of their revenue when that tax appeal went. So tax revenues can be an issue. Jobs, the data center developers promise a lot of construction jobs, a lot of union jobs. So data centers can take years to build, and there are good construction jobs, but those are temporary jobs. The permanent jobs, they say like 100 jobs for a 600 megawatt data center. They aren't necessarily high paid IT jobs. In our particular case, Cyrus One is our developer. That's the same developer in Aurora that had the diesel generators running for 3 days because of their transformer went out. They have hubs. They have their technical hubs in Dallas and Aurora, Illinois, and one on the East Coast. And if you look at their careers page on their website, you will see that most of their high-paid tech jobs are based in one of those hubs or they're remote jobs. So for a rural location like us, the 100 jobs that they're promising are going to be janitorial, there'll be HVAC jobs, there'll be landscaper maintenance jobs, which aren't bad jobs. I mean, some of those can pay above minimum wage, but the data centers like to promise a lot of high-tech jobs that don't necessarily happen. And then the loss of jobs from AI really outweighs what you're getting out of the data center. I had an article, I didn't, Catherine, I didn't know if I should share this with you today, but there's another article about Amazon laying off thousands of people at their warehouses because the AI technology is getting so sophisticated they don't need as many people. So we're creating temporary construction jobs and potentially 100 permanent jobs, but we're losing thousands of jobs from AI. So it doesn't balance out correctly. So responsible economic data center development should provide more benefits to the community than it does harm. So one of the jobs of elected officials is to push economic development, but it needs to be done responsibly. It's hard to stop data centers, so we need to make sure they're done safely. The group that I'm working with there are two opinions. So a lot of the people I think personally don't like data centers, but they understand that they're going to happen. We can't stop all of them. So we need to make sure they're done safely and that there's some benefit to the community. So the legislation will do that in the long run. But until that happens, we're helping people write new zoning regulations and proposing them to their local um, city councils and county boards. And we're helping them start moratoriums. So we want to slow this process down. These are coming in so quickly that these elected officials don't have the information they need to make an educated decision on approving a project in their area. So we're helping the local activists work through their zoning processes. You have to know what your zoning process is in order to try and slow it down and to write zoning regulations. So that's why we're pushing moratoriums. A moratorium, an entity, a municipal entity or county can implement a moratorium longer than what they can just hold off on voting. I'm sorry, I'm getting off track here. So municipalities are required to vote on a permit application within a certain amount of time. They can't put it off indefinitely. A moratorium will let them legally postpone a vote longer than the normal process. So we're pushing for these locations to implement moratoriums that allows time for the Power Act to run through the process, the legislative process, and for the local municipalities to write zoning regulations. Kavi mentioned community benefits agreements, so I'm going to talk about that too. But so far, Aurora, Illinois, Godfrey, Illinois, Fulton County, and Champaign County have all implemented moratoriums. We're going to have a vote on a moratorium in Sangamon County in a couple of weeks. So the statewide grassroots organization that I'm working with, it's all local residents in these cities and towns. Many of them have never been involved in any kind of activist projects like this before. They're concerned about their homes. So we're meeting every other week. We're sharing research and strategies. So we're sharing with people how they can work through these processes with zoning regulations, how they can try and push a moratorium. And we're encouraging them to talk to their local zoning staffs. The whole permit process is complicated. It goes through many steps. So a business submits a permit application. There's usually a paid staffer, zoning staffer that will look at the application and make sure all the blanks are filled in. And then typically it will go through a regional planning department, which will look at the like statewide requirements for a process. So do they need any EPA approvals? Are there error permits that need to be filed? And then when that work is done, it'll go to a zoning board in whether it's a city or a county. And then the zoning board votes, but it's a non-binding recommendation to the city council or the county board. And then finally, the city council or the county board will vote on it. So it's important for people to understand that process in their locality so they know when they can attend meetings, when they can speak. So this is all what we're sharing in these this local statewide meetings. We're meeting every other week. If anybody wants to get involved in that, I can put my email address in there and I can add you to our listserv. So I'm gonna stop with that and move on to what Third Act can do. So I will say the first thing you need to do is educate yourself about the project that's coming to you, the data center, this project that's coming to your area, and then educate your neighbors. You need to get people involved and have them understand the implications of these projects. You need to meet your city council members, meet your county board members. Talking to these people in person is really valuable. They will listen. They appreciate the input from the public, and they need to hear what their constituents think about these projects. Calling and emailing them is real important, but the meeting in person is especially helpful. You need to watch agendas for your zoning boards, watch agendas for your city councils so you can see when these topics are coming up, and then attend these meetings. Going to the meetings is very influential on elected officials. And then I would say follow third act activities. I mean, there's going to be more education coming from third act, and we need to all work together to understand this and understand the impacts to our electric rates and do what we can to make sure these projects are safe and beneficial until the legislation gets through. One thing I didn't mention was the community benefits agreement. So a community benefits agreement is basically a contract between a municipality and the developer. So the zoning regulations can talk about noise and lights and diesel generators. But beyond that, a community benefits agreement can kind of fill in the gaps on what the community needs from that project. So we have a 4,000-acre solar farm in Sangamon County who signed a community benefits agreement with our county. That included repairing the roads from the construction, so they had to fix the roads after the project was done. It included that the developer is donating $250,000 a year for 20 years to the county to be used for community improvement. So the community benefits agreement can fill in a lot of needs that zoning regulations can't cover. Zoning regulations basically are land use issues, so it's kind of limited in what you can regulate. But the community benefits agreements are very important, and I was really glad to see that in the legislation.